All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it's week number 6. We have our big-time rivalry, people creating rivalries out of smack talk from the summer. But the biggest news ever coming out of all things college football this weekend, our buddy, my co-host, Fresh, is going to be celebrating his anniversary of his 21st birthday. I think it's anniversary number 17 for him, or 16 for him, in Las Vegas.
It's the 21st birthday times 16. We're getting there, but it's gonna be a heck of a time.
It's the 16th time, not times 16, I think.
Yeah, 16th time. Yeah, not that old.
No,
I feel like at times though.
at times. It only gets worse.
I was told there'd be no math.
Yeah, really. So, Fresh, loaded weekend this week. I don't think we expected it to be this jam-packed with some really good games, because we know that October, usually the last weekend of October, that's the big weekend. And then we lead up until rivalry weekend at the end of November. And it seems like every single month here ends on this really, really high note. But going into week 6, this is an absolutely jammed, loaded slate here. And that's not even talking about the Heidelberg Student Princess traveling to Mount Union to play them. But we'll get into that game later. Fresh, what's the first game that you want to talk about going into week 6?
I mean, first on this loaded schedule, when I want to celebrate my birthday, I'm looking for, bourbon, Cajun food, Nashville hot chicken, and that only, poetically leads it to looking at the Tennessee Volunteers traveling to Baton Rouge and taking on the LSU Tigers. This is kind of like the Mandalay Bay, Paris, equivalent of a football game on this Saturday, where there's a lot of glitz and glamour. It's not the greatest resort, but it's a pretty good quality one. And we're gonna have a lot of magic and a lot of fireworks when this comes down to it. You got people coming down from the East Tennessee hills and people up from the the Louisiana Bayou. It's a very eclectic fan bases on both sides that really bring a lot of extra added energy off the field to this matchup. And you start looking at it. I know there's a lot of anger from LSU and from the SEC itself at CBS for not having this as the 3:30 kickoff. It got the noon kick, 11 a.m. Baton Rouge. There's a lot of factors that I thought, initially you just got to describe of why this came down. Single teams in the SEC and part of that contract are only allowed, I want to say it's 3 games at that 3:30 kickoff spot in the season, excluding the SEC championship game if they were so lucky to make it. So you already had the Florida-Tennessee game locked in. Georgia-Tennessee is going to be a 3:30, and Alabama-Tennessee is going to be a 3:30. So they were kind of at their max basically already with the 2 future ones coming up. So they had to bypass this game. And with Alabama, Texas A&M getting the night kickoff, they didn't want to push this to a 7 o'clock on ESPN because they didn't want to have it conflict. So the only other option at that point is having it as a noon kick. It's just going to be a different kind of vibe there in Baton Rouge. If the LSU fan base and the LSU football team was not playing as well as they are right now, I could see that being a very dull crowd to start. But with them winning 2 league games, beating Mississippi State, and then beating Auburn last week, I got a feeling they're going to get up for this one because they have a chance. They're the underdog, and they're ranked number 25 in the country. So it adds a little extra, they're going to have a little extra fire and a little force to get out of bed and get ready to go and tailgate there and get the gumbo cooking. The Vols are favored by 2.5 as of record this morning. LSU's won 5 straight in this series. The last time that they played was in 2017, so it has been a while. The Vols do lead the overall series 20-10-3. But the last 5, LSU has won 30-10 in 2017, 38-7 in 2011, 16-14 in 2010, 21-14 in the 2007 SEC title game, and then 28-24 in 2006. So the first 3 matchups pretty close. The last 2, there's definitely been a difference between LSU and Tennessee in those 2 matchups. The last Vols win, though, was in 2005 in Baton Rouge, 30-27. So there's a little, situation that could potentially brew in there. But of all these matchups, if you haven't even seen it on a video or you didn't even watch it initially when it happened, this is kind of a microcosm of the 2 schools, the 2 fan bases, the 2 coaching staffs that have come through both these universities in the past 20-something years. The 2010 matchup, I remember this because I was working at a different place and I came home and watched the ending with a couple of our buddies at our house. But LSU was down by a point. They had the ball at the Vols 3 or 4 yard line. Les Miles and his fantastic, clock management really paying off. And Derek Dooley, the head coach for Tennessee, on the other sideline. Mass substitutions all over the place. The clock is ticking. There's pandemonium on the field. LSU goes to snap the ball. It flies right past Jordan Jefferson, about 25, 30 yards down the field. Clock runs out. Everyone thinks the football game is over. Tennessee players are storming the field. The only problem is that the clock didn't end and the game was not over. At the time of snap, Tennessee had 13 guys on the field. Ran an unplanned down, had the penalty. They kicked the game-winning field goal. Vols lose because of that mayhem, and that meant, that just issues going on there at the last, and LSU survives at home. Some of that Baton Rouge, Tiger Stadium mystique, just absolute pandemonium, absolute craziness that brought that from a loss to a win at the split second, and just confusion from coaching staffs and substitutions. You're going to probably see a few of those moments here again on Saturday when guys just aren't in position. This is not, Neyland Stadium is a stadium. It's huge. 100,000 plus. It can get rocking. So the Vols shouldn't be blown away by this big road game coming to Baton Rouge. It's not a night game, so they don't have that extra flair. But you're going to have to be ready because now those 100,000, 90+ thousand fans aren't really cheering for you. This is a big road game. This is not like going to Florida last year. This is a much more experienced football team for Tennessee, but can you handle the pressure of being the top 10 team in the country going into a hostile environment? That's where we're going to see where this team is and where this player's mentality are. The heads is a business trip, or they just think that they're going to be okay. You've got to come with the approach that this is a business trip if you're Tennessee. Be mindful. You might be on paper the superior football team. You've got to take in the elements of the crowd being loud, the environment, the road trip, being focused to address one play at a time and not be overwhelmed by the experience, and stay focused and stay in the moment. Really, the big key right now is Cedric Tillman going to even be back for the Vols. He's been out for a couple of weeks, had the bye week last week, maybe try to get him healthy. But if he's not ready to go, Jalen Hyatt's going to have to be that number one receiver for this all-volunteer offense to help move that football with Hendon Hooker. They're going to have to be on the same page. It's be able to communicate with your hands through motions. Verbal communication is going to be at a very limited aspect. You're going to have to be able to be on the same page and be understanding where to be, identifying coverages, and being able to adapt on the fly. LSU is giving up 109 yards rushing a game, so expect to see a little bit of Jabari Small and Jalen Wright. But it's going to be tough to find yards, though. They've been pretty stingy on that end of the football, so you're going to have to try to make your runs count, but you're going to have to be consistent in the running game to provide balance to that Tennessee offense. You cannot go one-dimensional, because that's when the Ojalaris and the pass rush of the LSU Tiger defense will be able to cause some pain and some influence on Hendon Hooker and keeping him in the pocket, forcing him into a throw. You've got to maintain balance going on the road, especially late. If you have a lead, you want to run the football to get out of there and not throw the football that might lead to mistakes or the clock stopping. So be mindful of that when you're in that situation. Tennessee, though, they've struggled on the road versus ranked teams. Their last 10 on the road versus a ranked opponent, they are 3-7. And that includes the overtime win versus Pitt, a 3-point win last year at Kentucky, and then a 6-point win at Auburn back in 2018. They have not been able to really handle the moment. Obviously, this is a much different team than a lot of those years prior, but the same mentality of just getting over that hurdle and being able to show that you are a worthy team on the road, as well as being in that friendly confines of Neyland Stadium there in Knoxville. The Bayou Bengals, they're 6-4 at home in their last 10 versus ranked teams. They know how to get it done. They know how to bring the crowd into it, bring the home environment, and make it a fortress that is really going to be a hardened place to go through. So, again, back to the initial point of understanding the moment, being focused, and being a team playing smart football on the road and showing that you are worthy of that top 10 ranking. Things can happen no matter what your ranking is. You go on the road, it's a much different environment. Look what happened last week with Georgia. Really, we're not in their mindset early on versus Missouri. Missouri's not a talented football team per se, but they were able to rally and build up and play with emotion for that one football game to make that upset potential. And you're going to have that same kind of vibe coming from LSU. So be focused in the moment if you're Tennessee. LSU, their running game is going to have to be present, and they're going to have to, for multiple reasons. Number one, that's the best way they've moved the football all season. But number two, to keep Hendon Hooker in that offense on the sideline. And it's got to be a lot more than Jaden Daniels. So far, he has thrown for 916, but he's also rushed for 321. Stat-wise, individually, he is the leading rusher, but they rotate 4 running backs, and those 4 running backs have combined for 620 yards and 12 touchdowns. So you're going to see a good dose of Armani Goodwin, Noah Cain, John Emery, and Josh Williams. The 4 of them will complement Daniels at the quarterback position when you're running the football. But those guys have got to be very involved in the football game, because the passing game for LSU has not been as explosive, has not been lethal. Keyshawn Booty only has 11 receptions, not even 90 yards and no touchdowns. They really haven't found that go-to guy, haven't got him in the rotation from a passing game perspective. It's a smattering here and a smattering there, but the running game has been the focal point. The Tigers are going to have to bring that in force, and they're also going to have to trust that offensive line, which has been suspect at times in this big game. Tennessee's defense has improved week over week, especially from last year even to this year, but then this year, week to week, they're going to come with a little an energy and an excitement, and they're going to try to look to get the stops, shorten the field, and allow the Tennessee offense to make plays. You're going to have to be able to be smart, block at the line of scrimmage, open up holes for the running game, and be able to move the football and keep the opposing offense off the sideline. Your best offense and your best defense is your offense running the football and scoring. And you're gonna have to score touchdowns over field goals because we know Tennessee and that lethal offense is going to score touchdowns. They do not kick field goals. That's kind of where LSU and the Brian Kelly scheme is going to have to be, of playing a little bit conservative and taking your shots when they're there, but being mindful of a team first approach, because Tennessee is lethal on offense and they have a very aggressive defense that sometimes can get beat, but sometimes can make plays. Wrapping it up, just kind of looking at stat wise, both teams are scoring. Tennessee's scoring 48 points a game, LSU scoring 36 a game, but defensively, Tennessee's only given it 19 and LSU's given it 14.8. So they're minimizing the opponents and they're really putting the extra point on the board. They're running scores up. They're showing dominance offensively. Which one of these defenses is going to break? That's the real question. They both have played well so far. Which defense will break? Which offense will put them in a position to really struggle, not get off the field, and get caught in bad situations? Both quarterbacks have progressed. Of the two, I still think Hendon Hooker is the best in this matchup. But it's going to be a lot of elements come into play. A big test for Hendon Hooker and Josh Heupel and that Tennessee Volunteer football team. This is a next step if you really want to show that you are back, that you are fully there. You've beaten Florida at home. You've been able to win at Pitt. And you've continued to move up and move up and move up and show progress. This is another stepping stone for that volunteer program in their return to what they used to be in the 90s and before. I think at the end of the day, the Volunteers escape in this football game. They take down LSU. It's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a 4-quarter battle. But I think late in that second half, late in that fourth quarter, Tennessee just has enough extra left in the tank, and they find a way to win 31-24, 31-21, somewhere in those range.
So I did check while you're breaking that down there, Fresh. Cedric Tillman did return to practice on a limited basis this week already. We're going to be monitoring his status all week long. Heupel came on in his evening press conference and said that it won't be decided until later on in the week. So if you are going to be in Vegas, like Fresh and some other one of our buddies, and you're looking at this, make sure that you are monitoring Tillman, because if Tillman plays in this game, it's a game changer. I don't know. He had ankle surgery about 2 weeks ago. I don't know how quickly he'll bounce back. Hendon Hooker's the more mature quarterback. I've been going with Rocky Top all year long. I think that at the end of the day, LSU hasn't really seen an offense like Tennessee all year. The closest thing we can say is that you take a look at what Florida State did with them, but even Florida State and Mississippi State, those are lighter versions of the Tennessee offense. I think this Tennessee offense is really going to put some points on the board. LSU might limit them. They might not get up to that 49 number, but I definitely think that you're going to have a hard time holding Tennessee under that 30-point mark right there. The question is, can LSU score enough points to pass that up to get to be able to beat Tennessee? I don't think they can. I'm going with Rocky Top again, 5-0. Second leg of that big stretch that Tennessee has coming up, setting up a huge monster showdown next week with Alabama. I like Tennessee in this game.
That's a great point you brought up about the Mississippi State game. If I'm Josh Heupel, I watched that football game. I want to see where the opportunities were from that Bulldog offense against that defense that they never took advantage of. Like they missed throws or missed seams. That's how you're going to attack. But the other thing is Tennessee has a running game that Mississippi State does not. And when Mississippi State was struggling to throw the football, they had nothing to fall back on. That's where I think the volunteer running game comes in and helps offset that a little bit and provide a little more balance.
Absolutely. All right, Fresh, let's go to the next game this weekend. Originally one of the marquee games of the weekend. It also won our fan vote. The Ohio State Buckeyes traveling to East Lansing to face the Michigan State Spartans. Fresh, one of my favorite, you guys are going to be in Vegas. One of my favorite Vegas movies is Vegas Vacation. And this is exactly the idea of which character is whoever you're rooting for. Are you rooting for Ohio State? If you're an Ohio State fan, you are Nick Papagiorgio. You're winning you put a dollar in, you win a car. Put another dollar in, you win a car. You put another dollar in, you win a car. And believe me, there are some Ferraris sitting there at Ohio State right now. We'll get into that here in a second. But if you're a Michigan State fan, you got to feel like Chevy Chase at that moment when he goes to that dirt poor casino and he's sitting there playing the war game and what number am I thinking of? And he's losing his shirt. That's how you got to feel if you're a Michigan State fan right now. Michigan State is on a 3-game losing streak at this time. They are a 25.5-point underdog to Ohio State. Over under right now is set at 63. Michigan State is only averaging 16 points per game in the last 3 games. They're starting to show that they really missed that Kenneth Walker III factor last year. If you take a look at this, what does Michigan State do? They use the run to set up the passing attack. They don't want the game to be put completely on the shoulders of Peyton Thorne. Peyton Thorne, good quarterback, just not one that you can sit there and say, hey, go win me this football game. Let me put everything on your shoulders to have you go win me this football game. Michigan State has to use the running attack. Right now, they have 180 yards rushing in the last 3 games. This is putting too much pressure on that quarterback, and it's also putting pressure on that defense there. Michigan State cannot afford to play behind from Ohio State, which is probably very likely. Let's think about last year. They traveled down to Ohio State, and that game was over within the first 8 minutes of that game. Ohio State put up, I want to say, like 28 points in their first 4 drives and absolutely took the will out of Michigan State. It's scary to think about this here, Fresh, and I'm going to give you something. Michigan State has one of the worst pass defenses in the country. They had one of the worst ones last year. So we all thought Mel Tucker, defensive guy, he's going to get this stuff fixed. He's going to get the right cornerbacks in. This isn't going to be 2 years in a row. And oh my gosh, is it ever? It's 2 years in a row that they can't stop anyone from throwing on them. Think about this. CJ Stroud has to be licking his chops with his team. And he doesn't even have Jackson Smith-Njigba yet. He's been dealing with a high ankle sprain. There's rumors saying that he's not going to be back until 2 weeks from now when Iowa comes to Columbus. But with that whole receiving core, with everything that they've been doing from Abuka to Harrison Jr. to Fleming now, starting to pick up the Stover, the tight end, Ohio State's got to be going, we are going to be throwing all over this team very quickly and very on. I've watched the last couple of Ohio State games. I've noticed a difference. This Ohio State team seems a little more locked in than normal. And when I say that, you saw last weekend when they played Rutgers. Stroud didn't have his normal 300 yards passing day. So when Stroud had an off day, Ryan Day's starting to learn from previous mistakes in the year. If you're not doing with Stroud, well, let's turn to this running game that we have 2 phenomenal running backs. You have a 2-headed monster looming in Columbus with Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams. Travion Henderson's been dealing with some injuries. Mayan Williams has really come out of late, had an amazing game last weekend. And really what Ryan Day needs to do is just ride the hot hand. The Buckeyes have to be careful, though, in a game like this. You can't just overlook this game. You can't be like, we have a bye next weekend. We can just get to the bye. We're just going to put this game in cruise control. You need to be really certain. This is where I think you kind of can play it a little safe, though. You don't have – I talked a little bit about Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's been dealing with a hamstring injury. You don't have to rush him back. You could give him another 2 weeks off for that soft tissue injury and make sure that he's returning for full health to bring back for that stretch run. For me, for Ohio State, the most surprising thing has been how much improved the Ohio State defense has been. Last year, after that Oregon loss and after the Michigan loss, I eviscerated the Ohio State defense. I absolutely brutalized all of them. And I said when Jim Knowles was hired, let's wait and see. I've seen enough going into this game here. I've been so impressed with the linebackers mostly. Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers have taken a really nice jump. They're actually flying around to the football. I'm watching how fast the defense is closing down the football. They're making sure tackles. They don't miss a lot of tackles there on defense. So when you get a guy, he's stopped after a yard or two after that catch or when he gets into the second level. Michael Hall, Jack Sawyer, really creating pressure from the defensive line. It's been a great team effort. The most impressive thing I've seen from Ohio State at times is getting pressure to the quarterback without having to bring an extra rusher. When you're able to bring pressure with your 4 down linemen and not have to bring a linebacker or a safety, a corner off on a blitz, it really creates a hard time for the quarterback to make those correct reads. Peyton Thorne, we talked about him. I talked about him a little bit earlier here. He has 6 interceptions on the year. You can force him into mistakes. I wouldn't be shocked to see Ohio State get 1-2 turnovers from him in this game there as well. Ohio State currently sits with the 10th best defense when it comes to yards allowed. It could be a very, very long day for Sparty. For me, if Michigan State wants to have any sort of chance in this game, they have to go touchdown for touchdown with Ohio State. That means you are going to have to score, score, and score again on them. It's not going to happen. I don't see that. The only other possibility is if Ohio State makes some really bad turnovers, you got to have some firepower to keep up with this Ohio State offense. It's going to be a tough one. This could get real ugly at halftime. I got Ohio State winning big.
It is going to be an epic beatdown. I don't really see any way Michigan State competes. I mean, they got owned by Maryland. The best thing for Ohio State, just cover the spread and make sure your players are healthy going into that bye week and moving on. The question really, I think, focuses on Mel Tucker and where the state of this program is. Your first year there in 2020, you lost to Rutgers in your first game. You struggled. You had a rough year. You go on the transfer portal. You bring in Kenneth Walker III. Lowly 2021 opener at Northwestern. He runs all over the place, and you kind of found a diamond in the rough. Build off of that. Surprise people. I'm not. Why are we? It's still kind of always questioning why we're surprised that this is happening. The teams they still should have lost to Michigan last year in that game. They had a late, fourth quarter miracle comeback versus the Wolverines, kind of spurring them through. They played Ohio State a couple weeks later. They got smoked. And Penn State was already without Clifford at the time when they played, and they kind of got themselves a lucky, bump there. We're starting to see the true effects of this program where offensive line, defensive line, there's no push, there's no protection. They don't have the same kind of running back that they have this year that really draws and helps the offense move. Thorne has actually gone down, and the defense has not got anywhere close to improving. This is I think Mel Tucker's a good coach, but that contract might be a little premature for what they gave him last year. It's a lot of money to give somebody this is your return product the year after. Not good. He obviously has himself a little leeway there for next year or two to get it turned around, but your one year splurge is turning into a potential, DEFCON 1 situation there in East Lansing. And it's only going to get worse after Ohio State comes to town and puts up 50 plus.
All right, Fresh, where are you going to next?
We are going to the site of College Game Day. No, we're not going to Tuscaloosa. We're not going to the Texas State Fair. We're going to Lawrence, Kansas for TCU and Kansas in football. This is kind of like the Resorts World Casino of the weekend here. New, still trying to find its full fit, flashy, but not at the elite casino level yet, but it's still there. There's a lot of promise so far in this season. That's kind of the way I looked at this one coming into this game. Kansas is ranked in the AP Top 25 for the first time since October 2009. 13-year break. And after that, they had a 3-year run in the top 25 prior to that from 07 to 09, and then they had an 11-year gap between there. So this is a big deal for Kansas football. And if you've seen some of their attendance figures, the fan base is just a product of the field. They've been getting housed by a lot of people. This is a great thing and something we all should embrace and be really excited about, that Kansas football is showing some life. Hey, they won the national championship men's basketball in March. Now they're 5-0. This is a pretty good run so far for the athletic department. But I think it really continues to show now getting game day. Now people are taking notice. They really want to be supportive and giving this other school a real chance to showcase themselves on the football perspective. The 2017 was the last time that Kansas football really had true success. They were 12-1 in the year, co-Big 12 North champions. They beat Virginia Tech in the Orange Bowl. They finished number 7 in the nation and actually got up as high as number 2 in the country. That was the best ranking in school history. So this year, there's a lot of pressure. Can they actually redeem themselves? Can they pair that off? Can they match with that? Ironically, Kansas did not break in 2007 into the top 25 until week 6. What week is it, Seth? It's week 6. Here they are. They break into a top 25. I'm going to say that's not just a coincidence. I think there's some sort of extra little magic going on there where there's something brewing here in Lawrence. Coach Leopold, Daniels at quarterback. The team is just bonded together and playing at a high level every single week, sometimes winning flashy and putting up a lot of points, sometimes winning with great defense like they did versus Iowa State last week and, in a very tight football game there. So winning in multiple ways, having to fight through ball games, not always having that cushion of a blowout win really kind of shows you can win multiple ways and build a character of a football team. Looking at the other side, TCU, they've had a pretty decent football history. They had a nice little run there. Them and Baylor, almost looking for college playoff spots and BCS spots there. They had some success in the past. This is not, from a ranking perspective, not much of a shock for that program. But seeing it in Sonny Dykes' first year, them coming from where they were last year toward the end, really struggling to just vaulting right up and making a run, and then just absolutely destroying Oklahoma. We kind of covered that in detail during our recap. But that was sort of their moment. Led by quarterback Max Duggan, transfer, came over from Georgia, been there for a couple of years. Really more of a pocket passer, but he has shown wheels at times. So far in the season, he's thrown for 997, 11 touchdowns, also run for 149. 100 plus of that was actually last week versus Oklahoma. So he's really showing a little bit of both, much more of a pocket passer, leading that spread offense and throwing the football around when he can so far for the Horned Frogs. On the other side, we've seen Jane Daniels, we talked about it a few times, thrown for 983 and 11 touchdowns. He's run for 329 and 5 touchdowns. He's definitely that kind of dual threat mobile quarterback that's really the guy who is in charge and is going to put it on his shoulders to make plays, whether it's with his arm or with his legs. They look to him to make the decision. They look to him to lead the team. And so far, he has carried at a very high level. And they have full faith in him to put them in the right spot for the right down and distance and to make the right play, whether it's with his arm or his leg. He has run for 80 plus in the 3 games prior to the Iowa State game. They won all those in pretty, convincing fashion. The Iowa State, Matt Campbell's defense put together a game plan that shut him down. They held him to 8 carries, 9 yards, and they only lost by 3, and it was 14-11. Definitely the worst offensive effort. So if I am looking at TCU's defensive coordinator right now, I'm yelling at him saying, look, that quarterback is the only priority you need to make. You've got to limit him from running, contain, set the edge, force him to throw. If you give him the edge on, the ability to make that run pass option, boot out, or even the quarterback draws, letting him use his legs as a priority number 1, you're going to be in trouble. You've got to take that away. You also got, when your defensive line, your linebackers are coming up on a blitz, sometimes you don't have to run at full speed. Sort of break it down. Set up a perimeter. Don't let him break the contain. Don't run too fast for a sack and have him slip under and break off for a big run. You've got to play a little smart, maybe not as explosive and as aggressive defense, but more of a building a wall and keeping him in front of you at all times. That actually might be your best option. It might not look flashy on the film room, but if you're keeping him in the pocket and you group tackling on him, that's how you're going to sort of minimize. That's exactly what Iowa State did last week and really put them into the curveball. Obviously, you hope Kansas will be able to look at what that happened in that game and make the adjustments, but that's where they really changed the football game, is taking away that ad lib, taking away that run, taking away that perimeter escape that he was bringing the previous weeks, especially versus Houston when they beat them and when they went on the road and beat West Virginia. The Horned Frogs, they're 6.5 point favorite early this morning, 7 point now. It's definitely changed a little bit. How do they maintain that? Duggan can throw, but they're going to have to run the football as well. And that's going to start with Kendra Miller, who has run for 386 on 51 carries. That's averaging 7.6 yards a carry and 5 touchdowns. Kendra Miller can run the football with authority. Duggan can throw. That offense will put so much pressure on Kansas. I don't know if they're able to be in a situation to have to storm back. When they played Houston and when they played West Virginia, it was a blow for blow. They never got in too big of a hole where they were worried they had to frantically come back. If you could get up on 2 touchdowns like what TCU did to Oklahoma, you put them, make them one dimensional, you put them in a serious problem situation. That's what they're gonna have that same mindset of throw, and then run the ball to keep him on the off the sideline and put up touchdowns. You want to be able to escape Lawrence and that frantic crowd that's going to be there for college game day and everyone ready to go at 11 a.m. That's going to be a hostile environment. Fans are going to be rowdy. You've been on the road before, but you're going to have to be able to be smart and play your game if you're TCU. Execute on every play. If you mess up and give them an inch, they are going to take a mile. So it's also going to be a test for Duggan and that offense to really focus and execute. No turnovers. I know it's football, it comes brain, hey, don't turn the ball over. But in this kind of hostile situation, if you turn it over, it's going to compound itself very quickly. You cannot let that become an option at any point during the football game. You have to dictate and take it to them when you're on the road. Looking at the stats, these teams are actually very, very similar from a points per game allowed and points per game scored and overall yards allowed. TCU 48.5 they're scoring per game. Kansas is scoring 41.6. TCU is giving up 22. Kansas is giving up 24. Both teams are running for over 200 yards a game. TCU has an advantage in the passing yards per game, so they're going to definitely try to air it out a little bit more. But then defensively, TCU's giving up 120, Kansas giving up 113. Both teams giving up 362 yards or less a game. So very elite defense from both sides. Which defense will break? Very similar to the LSU Tennessee game earlier, where the defense were very evenly matched on paper and on the stat wise. Which defense will break and how early will they break? Will it be an immediate, the pressure's too big for them in the situation, or will it be a late game mistake that just sort of compounds and leads to the floodgates opening up? Either way, one of these teams, the Cinderella slipper in essence, is going to fall. Big 12 is wide open for anybody, so it technically won't put you out of the race, but it definitely will hurt your chances down the stretch. I've gone back and forth on this one, but when you have game day in town, and in the 2017 was ranked the first time in week 6, it's week 6 here in 2022. I'm just going to keep fueling it. Rock Chalk, Jayhawk, KU. Let's go, Kansas. Get the W. It's gonna be an exciting time. It's an early morning kick, so hopefully those noon slots Eastern time are going to be full of joy and full of back and forth football. But go get it, Kansas. Take care of business and keep this train moving.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about you guys all over there out in Vegas at Ellis Island enjoying steak and eggs on Saturday morning, and then 9 o'clock rolls around and you guys get some amazing kickoffs going on.
That's the best thing about going out to Vegas. You have the college football kicking off at 9 a.m., NFL kicking off at 10. Oh, it's eggs and kegs and ready to go from there.
And steak.
And steak.
This is the difference of being, I will be back here at home because I am domesticated and not able to join all of the fun and excitement out that way. I got Kansas in this game too, man. I just got to keep rolling with the hot hand. I'm going with Kansas. Jalen Daniels has looked fantastic, and Kansas is just a feel-good story. I just want to get on the train with them, and we'll roll through Lawrence until they lose.
Yep, got to keep rolling, playing the heater.
All right, Fresh. So my next game that we're going to the Pac-12, but it is not after dark. This is actually a noon kickoff for them on the West Coast, 3:30 kickoff for us over here on the East Coast. And that's the Utah Utes traveling to Los Angeles to play the UCLA Bruins. Utah is a 4.5-point favorite at this time. Over-under is set at 64 points. This should be a fun matchup between two very, very dynamic quarterbacks and what should have been two dynamic running backs. Well, I'll get into that here in a second. I went through and looked at these two teams. UCLA has the number 2 rush offense in the Pac-12. Utah, number 3 rush offense in the Pac-12. UCLA is going to be led by Zach Charbonnet. He has 5 touchdowns this year already, averaging 6.4 yards a carry. He's a monster in this rushing attack, but he needs his counterpart in this action here. You have DTR. He's a true dual threat quarterback here. 223 yards rushing. He's running at 7.2 yards per carry. He has 3 touchdowns himself. For him, Charbonnet needs DTR and DTR needs Charbonnet. it kind of goes together with how Chip Kelly makes that rushing attack work there. So my next question comes out, can UCLA establish the run against the Utah defense? And what I know about Kyle Whittingham, when he knows what type of offense you're going to run against him, he is great at scheming a defense that's going to stop that here. So I'm looking at the two UCLA receivers that are starting to emerge. You got the big play guy, Jake Bobo, one of my favorite names out there in college football. And then you have the possession receiver, the guy who's going to move the sticks for you, Casimir Allen. Both have kind of separated themselves as the primary target there in UCLA. What was really shocking to see for me, Fresh, is because I know how big of a dual threat runner Cameron Rising is for Utah. UCLA has the sixth best run defense in the country. They're only allowing 80 yards per game right now. It's UCLA being led by their linebacking corps. So you got Darius Musawi, John Vaughn, and I had to reach out. We have a good friend of the show who's Samoan, and I had to ask her. I said, please tell me how I pronounce this person's name because I'm going to butcher it. It's La'atu Latu. I think I said that right. He has 6 sacks on the year. He has been an absolute monster in there. And if anyone knows about Samoans, they're strong as hell and they make great defenders. So I've been real impressed with this UCLA defense here and really impressed with this linebacking corps. The defense had a few, if you go back and look against Washington last week, Washington was the 15th ranked team. Defense had some hiccups in that fourth quarter against Michael Penix Jr. But then I started asking myself a lot of questions about this. What was that defense? They were up 3 scores at that time. Was it we got a big 3-score lead that we're going to take our foot off the gas? Was it Michael Penix Jr. who just started making plays and is really a talented quarterback? I don't really know what the answer is for that. Only UCLA and Chip Kelly know the answer. What I'm saying here is UCLA, if you get a lead in the third quarter, you can't take your foot off the gas versus Utah. Utah is really going to make you pay for that. Utah is entering in a really difficult stretch in their schedule for the next 3 games. They're traveling to UCLA this week, and they can't be caught looking ahead. Next week, coming to Salt Lake, the USC Trojans. We've been waiting for this matchup. They have a bye, and then they have to travel to Washington State. They cannot be caught looking ahead. Utah absolutely dominated Oregon State last week. To beat UCLA, they're going to continue to need that balanced attack from Cameron Rising. I looked in here. Tavion Thomas, who we are really high going into the season, has actually been in Whittingham's doghouse for a while. If you he was benched for the first half of the Arizona State game. He was limited versus Oregon State. Everything that I was able to find online, whether it was from the newspaper articles or from different websites that covered the team, everything seems like this is an internal matter, that there's nothing more than that. Is this the game that he gets out of the doghouse and winds up really going out and performing? Because he definitely will have fresh legs. They're going to need him to soften up this UCLA defense. I'd also like to see the continued growth of Devon Velvey. Continue to grow, continue to improve. Sophomore wide receiver has 16 catches, 195 yards, 3 touchdowns in just his last 3 games. Overall, Utah right now has the 13th best defense in the entire country. They're only allowing 155 yards passing, but they're much weaker against the run. If UCLA can establish that rushing attack, it's going to force Utah to play behind. And that's exactly what Chip Kelly's got to do. And I know I say this all the time in certain records. If you are a team like UCLA, the best thing for you to do is to jump out to a lead and be able to stay within yourself, within your offense. Don't get behind and change your game plan. You want to force the other guy to change their game plan. UCLA is built to run the football. They're built to control time possession, and they're controlled to keep control of the ball. They don't turn the ball over very much. In the end, this is going to be a great game. UCLA and Utah can make this any type of game that they want. If we wake up on Sunday morning and this is an offensive explosion and the final score is 56-49, I'm not going to be shocked. If this is a defensive battle and it is 17-14 and won on a late second field goal, not going to be shocked. It's going to be an entertaining game. Definitely make sure you're tuned in for this one. I can't wait to watch this one. I'm going to say this. I think I'm very nervous about this. I think Utah might be peeking ahead that matchup with USC. I'm going to say UCLA clips them 31-27. And we're going to be talking a lot about what's going on at Westwood under Chip Kelly.
You know what the last time Utah played in that stadium?
Rose Bowl.
Yep. That offense kind of came out of the middle of nowhere, and they played with a little extra energy, but faded down the stretch. They just got worn out. I think you were kind of alluding to that with UCLA, sort of just mining it, keeping it, dodging through, and then finishing them off in the fourth quarter. But unlike you, I gave Utah a lot of grief last year. I had them in my 3 teams falling before 2021 season, and they proved me wrong. And I'm not gonna doubt them until I see it truly on the field. I think Rising and Thomas and that team find a way to get it done, and they survive and move in advance and keep moving forward in their defense of the Pac-12 title. To quote my cousin Vinny, these 2 Utes in Rising and Thomas are a special breed, and they're going to get it done.
Yeah, and like I said, this is like going to the casino at Fremont Street. This is just fun. This is just a fun game to play at. All right, Fresh. Let's go to the 2 marquee games we have this weekend. Let's go to the Texas State Fair and the Red River rivalry, showdown. I don't know what they're calling it these days. Something about Red River.
Something about the Red River, and it played right there in the Cotton Bowl.
Love it. Love it, Texas State Fair. As much as as we're getting older here, I can't eat the fried Twinkies, fried Oreos anymore. But this has always been one of the marquee rivalry games that we've looked at. I love this game. I love how the Cotton Bowl is half burnt orange and half maroon for Oklahoma. This is a amazing game to see. It's always tight. It's always close. Last year, Texas loses the game at the very, very last second. I just can't wait, man. Right now, we're sitting there. Texas is a 7-point favorite going into this game. But in a game like this, I think all bets are off at this point.
All bets are off. I mean, last year, Texas was steamrolling Oklahoma. They took out Spencer Rattler, put in Caleb Williams, and he burst on the scene and led, Boomer Sooner right back to get the big W. I think we were all like, we had questions. Is Texas, is Oklahoma, like which team is ready to go? Which team is actually for real? I think we had the exact same questions in 2022 at this football game that we did in 21. Is Quinn Ewers, we didn't see much of him. And then he gets hurt early on when he was showing some flashes versus Alabama. Is he healthy enough to come back? We haven't really truly seen him play through big games. So we got a lot coming there from that perspective. Oklahoma, Dylan Gabriel took a bad hit, really cheap shot hit there versus TCU. The team has kind of gotten thumped 2 weeks in a row. How do they respond? How does Brent Venables get that program back in focus? A lot of questions coming in this football game and directions. I mean, dare I say Oklahoma could be 0-3 in the Big 12 if they lose this football game. And that 0-3? Is that right?
0-3. Yep, they'd be 0-3.
Yeah, 0-3. I mean, that's just even thinking about it is mind-boggling. If Texas wins it, it keeps them alive to really run through. I mean, they still have games versus Kansas State. Iowa State. The road is paid for them if they can get over this hurdle, which they've struggled to do recently. It's going to be I kind of noted we have this theme going of casinos in Vegas, but this is like the mirage. Like, which team are we actually seeing? We're out there in the Texas heat. Do we see a great team, or are we just being deceived by the mirage and it's actually a fraud? What kind of program is going to rise up and truly lock in? If Texas loses this football game, especially in the state that Oklahoma's been the past 2 weeks, what does it say about Texas? It puts them at a point where all this recruits, all this team, this development, what has Sark actually done there in Austin? Um, is Xavier Worthy? Haven't really heard him or Bijan Robinson truly explode week in and week out. Are they saving them? Have they been sort of low key and playing everybody else? Or is just the production, the flow of the offense not going through them as much as it was last year? Uh, I hope to see Worthy and Robinson really have a staple game and have a showcase football game. They're going to have to do it if they want to beat Oklahoma. If they are not heavily involved, whether it's Hudson Card or if it's Quinn Ewers coming back or even the third string quarterback, if those two aren't making plays for Texas and putting their foot down on this rivalry, Sark is in trouble. Texas football is in trouble, and it allows Oklahoma to continue to get life and come back off the mat. You see all the meme of the Undertaker who rises out of the dead, and like in the wrestling memes. That's exactly what this could be for Oklahoma, because if they're 0-3 in the league, you have basically put a nail in the coffin. You've shown dominance over Brent Venables in that program, and it gives Texas a recruiting edge. If you allow them to fight in this football game and pull off another win, it takes away anything you have going in, the rest of the season and in the SEC. And it gives Oklahoma life in the season, gives Oklahoma life on the recruiting trail, and shows that they still own you. I'm going to go ahead. Texas is going to get it done. I don't know if it's going to be 55-52 or if it's going to be 27-20, but Texas somehow fights and Texas somehow wins this football game and put Oklahoma on some dire straits. And the honeymoon for Brett Venables will quickly be over after this period of time.
So, Fresh, one of my favorite gangster movies is the movie Casino. And one of the best lines in that movie is, there's a lot of holes in the desert, and there's a lot of problems buried in those holes. And winning this game for either side is going to bury the problems that they've had in weeks prior. I think it's going to come down for Oklahoma. It's going to come back does Dillon Gabriel play in this game? Is he medically cleared? Kid, don't rush it. Dillon Gabriel's faced enough injuries in his life. There are bigger things than football. Again, I'm not telling anyone how to live his life, but you got to think of those things bigger than just a singular football game. There's so much more that is able to be out there for that. I don't know if we're just saying that now because of the whole Tua thing, or if that's just kind of thinking what I would be saying to him as well as a coach. But if Dillon Gabriel plays in this game, I like Oklahoma. If not, I think it's going to wind up being the Bijan Robinson show. You're right. He hasn't had a game yet where he's just been truly dynamic. He's been good. He's had a lot of good games where he's been really, really good. But has he had that big, I've just completely dominated a game? He hasn't had that this year. This is the perfect game for him to do that in. This is the perfect game for him to go for 25 carries, 210 yards, and 2 or 3 touchdowns. Hudson Carr has been serviceable with Quinn Ewers being out. Definitely not as good. There's definitely a little bit of a drop-off, but he's taking care of the football, taking a lot more sacks, though. If I'm Oklahoma, you really need to step it up defensively. We need to definitely get some more pressure going on. We definitely need to get to the quarterback. There's a lot of talk this year. Texas's offensive line isn't amazing. They're okay. They're, again, serviceable. They do give up some sacks. Oklahoma, you need to build on that 14 sack mark right now. You look at how they've been able to do it. They also need to force some turnovers there. They got to do that in order to beat Texas. In the end, I don't think Gabriel plays in this game. I know that everyone wants to say next man up, but both you and I thought that Dillon Gabriel was a special player transferring from UCF to Oklahoma. we thought that he'd do really, really well. If he plays in this game, I'm taking the Sooners. If he doesn't play in this game, I'm taking the Longhorns. So that's how I would be deciding my pick in this game. I need to know more about his status before I make a full-on prediction, though. But again, give me this game within a touchdown no matter who wins.
I think it's going to be just an exciting, it's always going to be an exciting game. There's always going to be an unsung hero that's going to show up in these rivalry games and make a play. So that's going to be funny. What name we're going to be talking about on Sunday morning, Monday afternoon. We're talking about these games around the water cooler going forward.
Yeah. All right, Fresh. Game of the week here, even though Red River was probably one of our game of the week. Our other game of the week, the Texas A&M Aggies and their loudmouth talking coach, Jimbo Fisher, traveling to Tuscaloosa to face the Alabama Crimson Tide. Right now, Alabama is a 24-point favorite in this game here. Fresh, what this reminds me of is, and everyone has come across that guy who comes up, he goes with you to Vegas, and he just tells you all of how great he is, how much luck he has, and he's just the world's best at blackjack, or he's the best at throwing dice or playing roulette or poke. He's the best poker player. I guess poker probably be this one. I can read anybody. I can tell. And he's the first person out in the tournament. He's the first person that's, he has no chips left. He goes all in on a 2-7, and you're just like, what are you thinking? And that's kind of how I feel about Jimbo Fisher. What were you thinking running your mouth to Nick Saban? You don't think he's going to keep receipts on this thing? You don't think he's going to make an example out of you? I don't care if Bryce Young's playing. I don't care who's playing in this game. Texas A&M, you're going to need to put on your big boy pants for this football game, because Alabama and every single one of those 5 stars that they've recruited, they're up for this game. The Iron Bowl might not be that good this year. This is the game they're going to get up for, and this is the game that they're going to smack you in the mouth for.
Well, first of all, those players, they love Nick Saban, and they took that offense of Jimbo coming after Nick, and they took offense that Jimbo was calling out all the players that Alabama bought. And so this guy, especially Will Anderson, you talked about, is like, it'll be settled on the field. And there's even kind of like the cold wind they go through. You're like, did someone just like die spiritually? Because when the way that the words come out back in July at SEC Media Days when Will Anderson said that, you kind of worry about the health for some of those Texas A&M offensive players, because he's going to be hunting. This is the MGM Grand game of the week. And ironically, it's played in Caesar's Palace. And our modern day Caesar is Nick Saban. He is ruling with an iron fist, and his legions have been dominating the territory for a couple decades at this point. They are going to inflict severe pain on Aggie Land, on Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo, you don't have a quarterback. Your offensive line's been subpar. You lost your best playmaker in Aeneas Smith, a couple before last week. Your offense is still just general trying to find itself. Your defense has played above average, but they're still all your freshmen. They don't know how to handle this. They have not really left Texas A&M, and when they did, they went to Mississippi State last week and heard the cowbells, and they got thumped. And that's nothing compared to Bryant-Denny Stadium on a Saturday afternoon. And this is going to be a Saturday night, 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock Central Time. All the lights, CBS in town. In reality, this game should not be an 8 o'clock CBS kickoff, because it's going to be a bloodbath. This should be a noon kick or a 4 o'clock on the SEC Network, but because the chatter during the offseason, and because A&M won last year on a field goal, it became must-see TV, and that's why we're all going to still watch it. We're still going to tune in, and we're still going to see Alabama put up 56-something points on Texas A&M. There's a funny little chant, and you hear it all the time, like, UGLY, you don't got no alibi, you ugly. Well, that's exactly what the Alabama cheerleaders are looking at over that sideline at A&M, and they're chanting because it's about to get nasty. Max Johnson, you had a tough time last year when you were playing for LSU in this game. You're probably the only one on this team that truly knows how to go into Tuscaloosa and experience that environment. That might actually help them early, but as the ball game goes through, as it goes through the motions, You're going to see a lot of Gibbs at running back. You're going to see a lot of receivers running all over the place. You're going to see Dallas Turner. You're going to see Will Anderson making plays on defense, and they are going to beat the living trash at Texas A&M. They're going to end the Aggie season essentially, and potentially get Jimbo fired. I know there's a tracker. Does Brian Harsin get fired first? Most likely he gets fired, but Jimbo Fisher's making a case to get himself canned first. And there's rumors coming out of all Texas old dudes of finding cash for the big buyout and trying to get rid of him because they put up the money for the recruits and the NIL deals and all the facilities, and they're not getting the product on the field. They're going to get very impatient right now. If you get beat bad enough, they might make a move, and it'll even be worse if Texas beats Oklahoma earlier in that day, and they are now high flying, and you get thumped by Alabama, and you're in this matchup. You are not even falling in the state of Texas behind, not just in the SEC. So a lot of things at stake right now for the Aggies. If Alabama does it, it keeps them in the dominant program. The only true question mark we have for Alabama, Bryce Young probably not going to play. But they looked good last week with the backup quarterback, and you know what? He's going to be called the backup quarterback until he actually shows up and wins some football games completely on his own. But that's going to be the biggest true. How can this team rally around the backup, run the football, make the passes simple? Can the offensive staff, Bill O'Brien and the company, really orchestrate a game plan in a week's time to prepare him for this big football game? That's the one wild card coming involved here is how will the quarterback transition? No Bryce Young at the helm. Will that be a big impact coming into this football game? But in the end, regardless of that, they'll batten down the hatches. They will run the football. They will play defense, and they will wipe the field clean of Texas A&M. Alabama by a mile.
Yeah, the only question really is if Texas A&M completely frustrates Jalen Milroe. Honestly, I'm getting pictures of Rocky IV and Ivan Drago standing over Apollo Creed, and it's just Nick Saban standing over the career at Texas A&M for Jimbo Fisher and going, if he dies, he dies. I look at this and I don't know. I think Gibbs is going to run for 200 yards again on them. I think that Will Anderson has 5 sacks on the year. He might end the game with 7, 8 on the year. This is going to be an impressive beatdown that Alabama is going to put on them. Texas A&M, you're going to have to do something. Like, you're going to have to pull out all of the stops. And even then, I just can't see it. I don't see you having the horses offensively to keep up with Alabama. Like, even if you limited what they are able to do, like, no, like, I can't see you scoring on Alabama. Alabama's only going to need like 21 points to win this game, if that. And
they might get that in the first quarter.
Exactly. But if Bryce Young plays in this game somehow, if that AC joint heals up, I don't think it will, but let's say it does, watch out. Like, this is going to be like 56-0 type of game. If the backup's playing, it'll be closer than that. I still think Alabama wins big. That 24-point number comes into question for me. They're fresh, but I'm looking at it going, Alabama is going to roll over these guys and just absolutely destroy Texas A&M.
It's funny where I think CBS is kind of number one has their fingers crossed and kind of hoping for a football game here because if it's a blowout, people are turning that thing off and watching another game by the end of the second quarter, maybe in mid-second quarter. So they're kind of like, can we get a football game to keep people watching our network for the full 3.5, 4 hours of the game?
Yeah. And that's the scary thing, especially with some of these TV deals. Yeah, you want to say like, oh, all these games matter and like they're all going to be close, but you're looking at that. They're going up against BYU at Notre Dame, that's out there in Vegas for you guys, and Florida State at NC State. That's another big one that you're looking at over there, and even Washington State at USC on Fox. Man, like, there's a lot of games that people can change the channel to, and I think you're right. CBS is definitely hoping that this is going to be a little bit better of a game.
Definitely.
All right, Fresh. Weekly question. like I told you, the Heidelberg Student Princes traveling for homecoming to Mount Union Purple Raiders. Fresh, I think you know this, but our logo and my father is an alumni of Heidelberg, and he is a former student prince. He listens to this. He listens to every single part of this. So gotta give him a shout out here. But I'm looking at this, and against common opponents, they're scoring about the same. Heidelberg has lost a game, but we'll say, I'll tell you this. I think, again, Mount Union's going to win because it's homecoming. But I'll say this. Does Heidelberg, let me say, does Heidelberg put up 20, more than 21 and a half points against Mount Union?
I'll say they score 24.
You're going to go with 24.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll say they get some garbage points late in the fourth quarter.
Awesome. All right. So, everyone who's listening to this, make sure you go to Twitter and wish my co host Fresh a happy birthday. It is his birthday on Friday, turning the fantastic, 37 years old. They're going to be out in Vegas, so definitely going to be enjoying that for them. And hopefully they come back big winners. I'm jealous, though, guys. Between you guys getting to have Pizza Rock and, like I said, $5 craps and steak and eggs over at Ellis Island there. I'm real jealous about that. Plus Keno. I do love me playing.
Plus Keno.
I do love playing
Give me
Keno.
some Shake Shack. Oh yeah, it's gonna be
a good weekend for you
Keno.
guys.
It's gonna be a good time. We already have the itch. We've already been texting back and forth. We've had the Vegas itch for 6-7 days now, and we're ready to get out there.
Yeah, it'll be another year or so before I get back out there, but you guys go have your fun. I'll stay and take care of the fam here. All right, folks, we want to send a special thank you to our producer, Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. So thank you to him. Please remember to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Good Pods, Amazon Pods. You know there's a bunch of them. Leave us that 5-star review. Let your friends know. We're 2 5-star prospects over here. If you're on there on the YouTube, make sure you're subscribing to the Spinnable Sports channel. Like us over there. Hit that notification bell. Make sure that you get notified every time we drop a new video out there for you. Remember, the Irrational Confidence Podcast is part of Spinnable Sports, so make sure you're going to spinnablesports.com. Yep, that is spinnablesports.com. And next Sunday, right now, the plan is for Fresh to be recording live from Las Vegas. So, exciting weekend, the first real big monster weekend we have in college football. It's going to be a fun one here. So, buckle up.
Can't wait. It's going to be a great time. A lot of teams are going to be show me games and who can bounce back after losses last week. Really got my eyes on the NC State, Florida State game. Which team's going to survive after that loss last week and bounce back, and which team's going to let that take them to another level. But all in all, it's going to be decided between the white lines. Really can't wait for Saturday. Let's go.
All right. Have a good night, all.
Bye, y'all.